of the day. Am I naked? Post your comments right now. Yes or no? Am I naked? Ready, set, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Not naked! Alright, so today's story time is going to be about the sluttiest thing I did in New York City, because I've done slutty things in other cities, but I really just want to hone in on one city. I'm not a slut. I can't imagine why anybody on here would think I'm a slut. That's just like absolutely ridiculous. No, but really I'm not. And my friends will back me up on that. I'm actually a pretty reserved person. I'm not very promiscuous. I just don't really enjoy the penis of a man that I do not know very well. But nonetheless, I did go through a crazy wild time when I first moved to New York City about 1.5 years ago. And this particular night, oh my God, it was crazy. I was pretty new to the city. I had only been living here for about 2 weeks, and I was on Tinder. I was kind of playing the field, but I was also talking to this guy, and I really liked this guy, but this guy that I really liked didn't really like me that much, so he didn't want a relationship, which, you know, in hindsight, he was right to not want to date me. I didn't know what the fuck I wanted, but I thought that I wanted him, and so once I want something, I almost always get it, and if I don't, then I just pretty much throw a tantrum, like a small child in the toy section of a store does when their mother tells them that they can't get the toy that they want. Yep, that's me, real mature, I know. So on this particular night, I was sitting at home, and the guy who was my love interest at the time was out with a bunch of his friends, and I know that there were girls there, and I was like really upset about it, guys. Honestly, I was just sitting at home just like, oh my God, he's having a giant fucking orgy with all of these people. They're going to a strip club, they're hiring prostitutes, like God knows what's going on, but I can't be mad because he's not my boyfriend. So I sat home drinking Prosecco, feeling sorry for myself. Finally, I was like, you know what? I need to go out. I need to get my mind off of this man. So I was on Tinder and I was talking to this guy, and he was a finance guy, and he was like 45 or something, but he looked even older than that. And he was like, you wanna go get a drink? And I was like, sure. And he was like, okay, well, you're gonna have to come here then. And I was like, wow. You are such a gentleman. And so he lived in the East Village. So I got into a cab and I made my way downtown to the East Village, and we met up at this Mexican place. We had some margaritas, and he really wasn't as attractive as his photos, so I was a little bit disappointed, but I was like, you know what? The guy that I really want to be dating, he's out with a bunch of friends and a bunch of girls, and I'm just trying to distract myself and make myself feel better about the current state of my life. So I decided to drink as many margaritas as possible, but also keep in mind, up until that point, I had been pre-gaming with Prosecco because that's just what I do. And me and this guy were talking, and turns out he's unemployed, but I was having a lot of fun because I was drunk. So I don't really remember what me and this guy talked about. We really didn't have a lot in common. He had like this really prominent New York City accent. He talked like this, and I was like really not into it. I just like didn't find it very attractive. It's my least favorite accent. Every time he opened his mouth, I kind of just wanted to like keep my legs shut. And while I'm on the date, I'm also taking frequent bathroom breaks because I want to be texting the guy that I really wish I was with. And I told him that I was out with a friend, which wasn't a lie. You know, he's a new friend that I just met moments ago, not a lie. Okay, so we ended up at a bunch of different bars. We're in the East Village, and then I come to find out that the guy that I actually wanted to be spending time with was in the East Village as well. And when I asked him where he was, he told me that he was actually in a restaurant that was like 3 blocks away from where I was. And at one point, me and the guy that I was on the Tinder date with ended up walking past the place where my love interest was, and honestly, that's fucked. And my love interest, who is supposedly having an orgy with a bunch of prostitutes, decides to text me and say, hey, so why don't you come down and join us, because why the hell not? And I was like, really? You couldn't have just invited me at the beginning of the night? You had to make me go through all of this torture, all of this overthinking, all of this overanalyzing. I went on a Tinder date so I could forget about you tonight, and now you're asking me to go out. Okay, I'll be right there. So I texted him, I said, okay, yeah, sure. Me and my friend are like finishing up right now, so I'll be there in a second. And then my brain went to like, okay, how do I end this Tinder date with this guy that I don't give a shit about? And I tell my Tinder date with a really terrible New York accent, I have to go home. I have to be up very early tomorrow, but it's been very lovely seeing you. So then he was like, oh, okay, do you want me to call you an Uber? And I was like, that won't be necessary, because I knew I only had to walk like 3 blocks to where my love interest was. But then he kept insisting. He's like, no, I have to call you an Uber. And I was like, no, it's really truly okay. But he kept insisting resisting. So I was like, okay, fine, call me an Uber. So he calls me an Uber and he walks me outside. He walks me to the Uber. I get into the Uber, and when you order an Uber, you have to add an end destination. So he put my address in, but I knew that I wasn't going to go home just to go back to the East Village to go see my love interest. So I got into the Uber and I said goodbye to the guy and I rode 3 blocks, and then I was like, wait, stop, I'm gonna actually get out here. And the Uber stopped and let me out. I got out of the Uber and I walked the rest of the way, and I walked in and I'm like, hey, he's like, how was your night? I'm like, it was pretty good, just hung out with a friend. And then after that, we had a pretty good night. We ended up going back to my place and we hooked up. I was definitely unstable. And the guy that I went on a Tinder date with never texted me again. And I actually found out that if you order an Uber, the application sends you notifications if somebody ends the trip early or when the person arrives at their destination. So the guy basically ordered me an Uber. I got into the Uber, and then like 5 minutes later, he probably got a notification that I ended up getting out of the Uber. So I'm sure that he kind of caught on that due to my abrupt ending of the date slash me getting out of the Uber 5 minutes after it picked me up, meant that I was going on another date or was just ditching him. So yeah, that was really, really messed up. I know this slutty thing that I did wasn't very sexual per se, but the behavior was very unladylike, unbecoming, and just extremely shitty. And when I look back on my actions that night, I really, really question myself. I almost don't recognize that person that night, but you know what? Sometimes we do crazy things in the name of love. So yeah, that's my crazy slutty story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I made a video like this a couple years ago, and I will also link that below. So if you guys want to see the other sluttiest thing I ever did, then definitely go check that out. I also want to say that slut, skank, whore are words that I have been called very, very often, and I've had a discussion with a lot of my friends about this. What does the word slut mean? What makes one a slut? Even though I use that word very freely and I joke about it, I think it's just a word that's used as a weapon against women and men in order to sexually shame them, and I don't necessarily like the word. I don't think that sleeping around and being promiscuous, as long as it's consensual and safe, is necessarily a bad thing. I think that the only bad thing is when people start using sex and intimacy as a form of manipulation or a way to hurt people, and perhaps in some way I was manipulating and hurting people that night. So that's why I call it the sluttiest thing I ever did. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to click the thumbs up button if you like my story time videos. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel because that makes you cool or some shit. Booby shakes, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!